you write, I love many people in Russia. And you talk about having to leave and being separated from the people that you loved. And then you wrote looks like a letter to your church in Russia. That every parting is a mini death, but in spirit, we know everything appears the other way around.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, it is like that. Because all this happens very gradually. I keep saying that it's a long sort of step by step process whereby we get our very first intimations of the other world, probably quite early in life. And then this gradually deepens and becomes ever more real. As far as I know, right up to our last day, because it's still becoming ever more real to me at this stage of life. And just remind anyone listening to this video that what I wrote, what Nicholas just quoted, was written 35 years ago when I was living in Russia. Yes, everything from spirit is the other way around. Well, I've demonstrated many times, haven't I, the difference between this normal life, imprisoned, as it were, in name and form, and characterized by thinking, and this, where you expand into the nameless and formless, where thinking is by and large absent, because the world is no longer divided. It's all of a unity. And it's a bit like this. You see, this world is like a mirror image of that world. So everything's the wrong way around. See, in this world, there's no death. In this world, everything dies, isn't it? In this world is divided between you and me. In this world, it's all one. In this world, it's man and woman. In this world, it's just one. It really is, this world is upside down, as it were, upside down and back to front, inside out, in contrast to what you could call the real world, which is the kingdom of God. This is the fallen world. This is the world of sin. This is the world of real life. This is mortality. This is immortality. So when we say goodbye to someone in this world, it seems as though we're leaving them. We're going to another country or somewhere. And, you may or may not ever see them again. But in this world, it's impossible to say goodbye, because where can you go? You're never separated. Separation belongs here. It's terribly difficult just to explain it. This will seem absolute nonsense to you, as what I'm talking about. But maybe you can just get a glimmerings of what I'm trying to. I can't really explain it, you see, because explanation exists in the world of separation, where you get this and that. This is what you're always trying to explain. The alternatives. In here, let me give you an example that might make sense to you. Look at the sky. How many skies are there? There's one big sky that holds the whole world in its in its radiance. How can you say goodbye to the sky? Or how can you say goodbye to silence? Bye-bye, silence. May see you again next year. Maybe not. See, silence is always with us, isn't it? That's as if you're accustomed to being aware of it. How can you say, well, of course, in autumn, people do get upset because we seem to say goodbye to light, don't we? It gets darker and darker. Bye-bye the sun. We go into long winter decline. They'd all get excited when the sun comes back in the spring again. But in the real world, you see, there's no darkness. So how can we say goodbye to silence? Because silence is a feature and a very useful threshold to have a deepening awareness of what I'm calling the real or the spiritual world. See, quite before too long, my friends will be saying goodbye to me when this body dies, when John Butler breathes his last breath. But if you've been listening, if you've been absorbing what I've been saying for the last few years, if you've got the message, the real message is that I can't die. The reality of me, you see, is this spirit. And you can't say goodbye to that, but because like it or not, I'm ever with you. You can pretend I'm not, you can just ignore me, that's fine. but like all true spirit, it's ever with us. That's why Jesus says, I'm with you always. You can't say goodbye to him. You can ignore him. You can say, hey, it's not real. But he's there. He's here. What do I mean by Jesus? Well, come back to silence. His ever presence. Presence of what? Well, again, if you've been following what I've been saying, you might put two and two together. And this presence, the presence of I am, you can call it Jesus if you like. God is with us. That's a fact, isn't it? One of the most obvious natural facts in creation. Primal fact. What comes before anything else? In the beginning was the Word. How can we say bye-bye to that? Well, that's exactly what we do when we fall into sin. You see, we fall into a lower level of consciousness where we lose the awareness of it. And there we live like this. You can't really say bye-bye to the sky, but we can draw the curtains and sit in a little dark room and pretend that the sun is shining out there. Which is really what we do.
John, you write, with greater confidence, we will be able to lose our attachments to outer and transitory life, which only comes to pass, and live as we are meant to live eternally in spirit.
Well, exactly. What I just puts it well. That's better than I've just been saying. But it takes much practice, my dears. A spiritual practice by which the one I've been most familiar with is this practice of silent prayer or meditation, which gradually, practiced every day, twice a day, over many, many years. It starts off by letting go, and gradually you let go more and more and more of these attachments to everything that we hold on to. Look, you can see the background of this room behind me. You see there are lots of books. There's my old granddad's chest of drawers there. That bookshelf, where are we? The bookshelf there, it was in my sister's bedroom. Dad made it for her, actually, when she was a little girl. And every book has been looked at and loved, and I suppose in my way I was attached to it. A lot of these old books in my bookcase, a lot of them go back to my childhood or even older. A lot of them are, oh, goodness me, several of them are 100 years old or more, several very old Russian books. They're lovely old things, antiques really, and I love them, and somebody's loved them and been attached to them for many, many years. Well, I can't take these things when I die, can I? They're all going to be let go of. Well, everything, all that we accumulate in this life, our family, our money, everything, and most of all our body, we can't take it with us when we die. We can't take it with us beyond the grave. So if you're going to prepare sensibly for death, we need to just practice this letting go. So when death comes, you just go out easily because you let go all these worldly attachments. This is why it's really very sensible to prepare for. None of us are going to escape death, but if one can go out having prepared by letting go, losing one's grip on this world, then you will sail forth with a quiet mind. Otherwise, you might die, like some people do, pathetically screaming and holding on like grim death to every last vestige of life. You see some sad. Well, I don't see many. Most of the people I've seen died rather well, but you hear cases of people who are far from prepared to die, whom it seems, instead of seeing a very welcome consequence to a life well lived, it's something absolutely dreadful to be postponed by all means. What's wrong with death? Everything dies, but one gets people who, we live in a funny world, don't we? We've got to spend most of our lives trying to pretend that death doesn't exist, denying the reality of it. Live as though this life endures forever, which it doesn't. There was one of the lovely old hymns that sank into me as a child. I think my granddad used to say it to me: redeem thy misspent time that's past, and live each day as if thy last. And another very good saying that farmers used to say: work as if you'll live forever, live as if you'll die tomorrow. That's good advice, my dears. There's no better way of focusing your mind than the thought that you're going to die tomorrow. And soon sort out what matters from what doesn't matter.
John, you write, all is the one consciousness within which we usually think we are separate. So it's more about the feeling separate, plus all the consequences of that. And then you write, how does one attain it? That's the big question, right? How does one attain it?
How does one attain it? Little by little. That's something sure I could say. Very occasionally, if one or two people, so they say, jump in and get it straight away, but I've never met one of them. I don't think it happens for many people. it's a very long dawning. Well, I'll tell you how you attain it. It's, the most natural way is because you simply die out of everything else. Look at me. I'm just dying out of everything that is not that pure one consciousness. And then what's left? So you see, the most natural of teachers is nature itself. And the nature of man is, or at least mortal man, is that he dies. And this is the best teacher. This is the natural teacher. And then you discover your real nature, which does not die. And the most natural, I can't call it a thing, but the essence of, I can't use the word. I was going to try and say that the most natural thing in the world is God, but that's silly. I can't say that. But the nature of nature, if we put it that way, is what we call God, you see. Yes, the essence of nature is God, the one essential component of nature is God. But you see, man has fallen from that consciousness into a state of lower consciousness, and so he is unnatural. He has perverted that right way roundness of nature into this wrong way roundness called sin, which is unnatural. This is what we have to deal with in this world, the unnaturalness of man. So if you want, how do we attain it? That's why I'm always telling you that one of the best first steps is to go back to nature. Go back to the land, look at trees and birds and sky and water, and just let these wonderful natural lessons sink into you. Do you want to know how to meditate? Long before you come up against anything called a spiritual teacher, just stand by a river and watch the water flowing. A wonderful natural meditation. That's life. Life is just a flowing, a constant flow over the stones. Millions of men have spent peaceful hours just sitting by rivers, watching the waters flow. A beautiful natural meditation. And hence comes that lovely old saying, water's under the bridge. Honestly, what's life? Just water's under the bridge, isn't it? Where's it gone? Flown down the water, thrown down the river. Life's flowing out, isn't it? Our days are flowing past. Where's our childhood? Flown away. Where's when we were young and beautiful? Now we're middle-aged or old. Where's it gone? Flown under the bridge. Water's under the bridge. How do we come to this realization of the eternal? Will we discriminate between what passes, what flows under the bridge, and what is always there? What is eternal? Silence. We start off, of course, thinking that the land itself is eternal. Well, in contrast to the water, it does seem more stable. The rocks seem more stable than the water. But then think a bit further and realize what happens to the rocks. They just get worn away, don't they? Everything in this world does, except, this silence, you see, this presence, this eternal something that sinks into our consciousness gradually, this peace. Yes, you can then be clever and go off and find some teacher or read some books and things. They'll attach some clever names to these things, but there's nothing better than nature, dear. Holy men have always gone out to nature, contemplated nature. I still do. I've read a lot of books in my life. A lot of these books behind me are spiritual books. Read them once or twice maybe, and that's it. The rest of their lives they spend sitting in a bookcase. I prefer to look out of the window now, look at the sky. Or just sit in my chair. I don't read anything. I just sit in my chair. I'm just silent. In silence, you get a wonderful sense of the order of all things. The more quiet you are, the more still you are, the more beauty you'll see. The more the wonders of life will unfold before you. There's no better teacher than just being silent. Silent and watchful. Just see what's in front of your nose.
John, you had sent me something about the explanation of a mystic.
Yeah.
I found very intriguing. And
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about what does being a mystic mean to you, and how would you interpret that?
The reason I like that word mystic is because I don't know what it means. I don't think anybody does really. That's why I like it, because yes. Your last question was, how do you attain it? What is it? You see, none of us really know. It's beyond knowledge. You see, knowledge is here. Here you can't know. It's beyond knowing. How do you know silence? Oh, we know about silence. You know of silence. How can you describe silence? Absence of noise. But what's silence? What's consciousness? What's peace or freedom or love, indeed, or presence or spirit? See, none of these things we can describe. Sorry, dear, I have to ask you just to repeat your last question. Oh, yes, you were talking about what is mystic. Yes, well, that's really what mystic refers to, isn't it? It's beyond description. You may know I've written, 10 books, and 9 of them have a title, mystic one thing or another, and because they're all really referring to this, to different aspects of this inexplicable mystery, so close to us and yet so impossible to describe, really. Well, I've done my best. Jesus spoke in parables, didn't he? Mystic. But an extraordinary thing is that as you become ever more comfortable with this not knowing, with the mystic. For example, here I am, I'm sitting in my room. Now, for half an hour or so, I'm talking on this Zoom. I'm being asked questions and I'm trying to answer it. But it's been a cold, wet day. I've sat in this room for most of it today. I've hardly said a word. I haven't seen anybody all day. I've just been alone sitting here. Oh, somebody phoned me this morning for a few minutes. Otherwise, my mouth hasn't opened all day. I went twice up to the church to meditate. Both times I was alone, didn't speak to anybody. And in a few minutes, when this interview's over, I'll spend the rest of the evening silent and alone. I'm entirely comfortable with that. I don't really like talking. I'm always conscious that I'm going to say something stupid. I feel much safer being silent. I don't really like these interviews now. I never have really very much. I'm a bit embarrassed by them. I really believe that the best teacher is not me speaking, it's me being quiet. There wouldn't be anything much to put on YouTube if I just sat quietly. Or would it be better? Maybe it'd be better. Anyway, I'm playing the game, aren't I? The mystic. Yes, I love silence. I really prefer silence too. I certainly don't like talking very much. I don't care much for music. Just like silence. If I switch something on the radio, I usually listen for a few minutes, then switch it off with relief. Yes, I avoid social gatherings these days. I don't want them. I'm comfortable with silence. I love silence. I'm at home in silence. And of course, it's not silence in a negative sense, because silence really is this presence, is this real, realer than the real spiritual presence. Let me give you another little example, if I can. You know how in human love, it's always a matter of yes, no, isn't it? She'll hold your hand, and then for some reason you can't keep these human embraces forever. It just doesn't work. Particular love making. It reaches its climax. It's over, isn't it? It's sort of stop start all the time. You have a wonderful honeymoon period when you first meet someone, and then that passes, and you may settle down to something more mature, or maybe once the sort of burst of excitement over, you get bored and look for another. But this, when you begin to realize that this invisible presence is really the lover that never says no, and you can feel this invisible embrace, which is really more intimate and more real. It really is more real. It probably sounds crazy to listen to this if you're young, but if you're as old as me, it may mean ever more reality, that the invisible embrace is more perfect than anything that can be experienced in the flesh. Well, that's quite a statement, isn't it? But I say it with all seriousness. I couldn't tell you if it wasn't real, but it is. So eventually, this sort of lifelong belief, or this lifelong search for the perfect woman to fulfill your dreams, is actually superseded or replaced by this spiritual lover, which is with you without fail all the time, and of course, beyond death. And this is really, for Christian people, the love of God, the love of Christ, the perfect love, the love of the saints, beautifully described by such saints as Saint Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, among many others. Once you get a taste of it, my dears, the the romances of this world lose their shine. Well, I don't know they ever really do, but in contrast, extraordinary, really. And I suppose this life of John Butler, which obviously dies out, is replaced by the greater reality of the spiritual life. Yes, all the pleasures of this life are really seem ever get a bit tired, really. You have enough of them. Like I remember I had a neighbor once who'd been on traveled around a lot. He said, I've seen enough waterfalls now. You've seen a few hundred waterfalls, and a few of the biggest ones. You begin to realize there's something. They're all a bit the same, aren't they? Variations of the same thing. I suppose in a way I feel a bit that way about spring. It's now middle of March, soon be spring. God knows I've been through 85 springs, rejoiced at them. Now, in a sense, I've seen it all before. The daffodils, the first flowers growing, of course my heart rejoices at them. But perhaps not quite like it did when I was younger. The Bible has lots of passages about getting old and the years come when you have no pleasure in them. It's about it, really. You look forward now to the kingdom of God. To that which doesn't tarnish and rust. How does Jesus put it? Where things rust and grow old, and thieves break through and steal. This invisible love, you can't lose it. You don't have to ask for it. It's just there. It's given to you. The invisible arms holding you all the time. Unfailing. So, my dears, how do you find the mystic? Just live. Just live. With a bit of luck, you'll find it. It'll come to you. It'll be given. It's a gift. Yeah. It's not something you can go to the supermarket and buy. Life itself will lead you there. God calls us. God calling us home. Jesus describes it as the good shepherd who comes and finds us, brings us home. So it is. The calling of your own heart will lead you home. If you ask yourself what you really, really, really want in life, what's your deep heart's desire? Then you follow that, my dear. It'll lead you home.